Wow. 3 cameras. Very impressive. Here we go with lesson 14. Well, hello everybody. Dave Hill coming at you live with lesson 14, the single string guitar Bible part 2. So we hope you've been studying hard and you've been keeping up with the lessons. I just wanted to show you a little bit at the beginning of the lesson there what we're going to talk about today. You probably saw me playing and you could hear the harmony that was happening underneath my single notes there that I was playing. And you might have realized or determined pretty quickly that there was 2 different keys going on there. There was a modulation of sorts between one key and another key. But because it was a modulation, it didn't necessarily mean that I had any trouble connecting one key to the next or continuing a melodic theme or motif that I start playing, because I know the 5 positions of my major scales very well, and I can start an idea pretty much in any position and then modulate to the next key without too much trouble by seeing the major scale shapes on top of each other. Okay, so that's a challenge for anybody who hasn't really studied the patterns very, very efficiently, or maybe played any kind of music where there's a lot of harmonic shifting. And that wasn't even a lot. That was only just 2 keys, just 2 chords in 2 different keys. But that's important to practice, and that's what we're going to do today. In this case, what I was doing was just 2 minor chords, 2 minor 7th chords, and they were minor thirds apart. And that's a very typical relationship of 2 minor chords. You'll hear a lot of songs that have that kind of a harmonic exchange of chords. Okay, so I've got a whole progression worked out for us, and I'm going to talk to you about what we're going to cover there. But point is, you want to get to the place in your guitar playing that you can see the patterns in your mind's eye, if you will, so well that anything that you conceive of in your ear or with your ear, you can find pretty much spontaneously when you're playing. Okay, so that's what we're working on. So let's go ahead and take a look at something here. I wanted you to go back to the idea of playing major scales and talking about what really comes down to different approaches to a major scale. You can see that I've written a G major scale here, and I've got another name written above it, but I want you to look at the bottom here. This is simply a G major scale. It sounds like this. Okay, so we know what the relationship of the notes is by now. There's a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, and that is the sound that we call the Ionian scale, or the first mode of the major scale. Okay, now when you harmonize the chord from the beginning of the tonic of the scale, you get a major 7th type chord. You get a chord that sounds like that, and it's perfectly suited for arpeggios like that, or the scale. Right? Okay, so we've learned about that in some of our previous lessons. And as you take each degree of the scale and you stack the notes of the scale on top, you're going to get different types of chords. But on the 2nd chord of the scale, we get what's called a minor 7th chord. Okay, so on this chord, on this degree, we get the chord is called A minor 7th. Okay, and it's a minor chord because it has a minor 3rd in the chord structure, a minor third, a fifth, and a flat 7. Okay, so when we play this G major scale against an A minor chord, okay, it's called A Dorian, in fact. Okay, so, and when you hear this sound and you hear the scale, it sounds like what we know as A Dorian, or a Dorian mode. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you play the G major scale against an A chord, it's going to sound like you're playing A Dorian, because it's going to sound like A is the tonic, and the G major scale against it makes it sound like you're playing the Dorian mode over it. Okay, so I made up a progression that's going to help us get the feel of that sound in our fingers and in our ears, but we're going to exchange it back and forth between another key, because that's what I was trying to show you in the beginning of the lesson. So my progression essentially went back and forth between the A and then B, the third chord of this scale would be a B minor 7. So I linked these two chords together in a progression. And you can really feel what the Dorian mode is all about. You can feel with these two chords that you've got to be in the key of G by way of these two chords. Okay, so that really gives us a feel for what it's going to sound like. So listen to the progression for a second, just the first couple bars. It's just the G major scale. Okay, so that's pretty usable, and then we're gonna be using the second position of the G major scale in our exercise, and I've circled where the roots are, but you'll actually notice the lowest note in the scale pattern is the A. So it almost looks like we're starting from an A note, which would be directly like we're starting from an A Dorian mode, but it's really just all the notes of G major. There's the circled roots right here, but when we play the progression, you're going to hear it against an A minor chord. So we're going to use this scale right here. And your ear, hopefully, tells you which notes sound good against the A minor chord. It's different than the notes, let's say if we were going to play a G major 7th chord, you'd resolve to different notes using the same scale, but your ear would tell you certain notes sound better against the G chord versus the A chord, where you're going to be drawn to other notes of the scale that sound better against the A chord. So we're going to go back and forth between an A Dorian vamp. Okay, we're going to use this scale pattern, and then on bar 9 of my progression, we're going to have the modulation occur, and the modulation is going to go to C Dorian. It's going to go up a minor third. So we're going to basically be C Dorian is the same exact thing as playing B flat major, okay? But it's going to be the same relationship of the chords, where we had the 2 chord and the 3 chord of this major key. Now we're going to have the 2 chord and the 3 chord of B flat major. So that's going to create our C Dorian vamp. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to try to stay in the same position and use the B flat major scale right here to create our B flat major key, and it's going to sound like C Dorian. Okay, so check that out. Now I'm going to put these 2 keys together. Here's G, but it sounds like A Dorian against my progression. Here comes the C Dorian. Notice how my hand didn't have to shift. There, back to G, right? My fingers are totally comfortable. No matter what I do, I can find G major. Oops, except for that. Okay, so what I'm trying to show you is that right inside of one position, I've got the capability of playing two different keys. In this particular case, two different Dorian keys, okay? So that's really important to practice relationships like this because it gets you used to hearing a progression and hearing a diatonic key center, but kind of forcing yourself to have to play into the next key center and continuing to develop your musical ideas, okay? So let's stop for a second. I'm going to get the progression on the board so we can take a look at it while we're playing. Okay, we're back and we've got our progression ready to go here. Okay, now check it out. I've written my A Dorian progression, which is essentially going to make us have to play G major through this part of the progression. We do this for 8 measures, and then we go down to C Dorian, which is essentially the same as playing B flat major. Okay, and then we go back and we do the whole thing again. That's what the first ending implies. It implies go back to the top here and do all this again, and then come down and then take the second ending right here. This is a little bit, yeah, this means go back to the top and then do it again and then come down and take the second ending. And then here's what I did that I thought would be good. Is now what we're going to do is we're going to go on the bridge of my progression. We're going to go to the straight major, the parent major key of both of these Dorian scales. So instead of playing the 2 chord and the 3 chord, I'm on the 1 chord. Okay, now you can still play the same major scale that you were using on Dorian, but your ear should tell you now that these are the notes that you want to play. You want to play a little bit more of the notes that relate to the G major 7 sound, okay? So if you remember from some of our previous lessons, you might even think about an arpeggio that you've learned. And we're going to cover some more of those, but we've got a few arpeggio shapes that I know I've shown you already. So you could also play those right there. Okay, so you go basically from the 1 chord to the 4 chord in the key of G, as opposed to the 2 to the 3 chord in the key of G. And then I do the same thing. Where I would be C Dorian here, now I'm on the 1 chord of B flat major, 1 to the 4. So you have a chance to let your ear hear what it sounds like and feels like to play a Dorian in a key and then down to the 1 chord in the key. And then the same thing, Dorian in a key, back down to the 1 chord. Okay? And so that's going to be a good lesson in trying to modulate and also adapt within the same key to a different mode in the same key, okay? Does that make any sense? So, check it out. Listen to me play over this now, and you're going to hear how my fingers and the melodies will sound different, subtly different between the A Dorian sound and the G major sound, and the B flat Dorian sound and the B flat major sound, okay? So check this out. Listen along. 1, 2, 3, 4. The G major scale. But I'm hitting a lot more of the notes that relate to the G and the C chord. Back to A minor. Okay, so pretty much stayed in one position right there, didn't I? And I'm sure you could hear that when I was playing in A minor, although it fit the key just as well as it fit when I played G major, my melodies were a little bit different against the G major 7 sound, and the notes that I played of G major were a little different. I hit a little bit more of the F sharp and a little bit more of the B, because those two notes together grab the sound of the G major 7s a lot stronger. When I'm on the A minor chord, I might play more of the C and more of the G to indicate the sound of the A minor chord. So it's a subtle difference in this treatment of the scale, but it has everything to do with about how you make melodies over it, okay? So what I want you to try now also as an exercise while you're doing this is to play a sequence. See if you can play a sequence over the 2 keys, and see if you can continue the sequence through the two scales. So check it out. This is the sequence I want you to play. I want you to play a diatonic 4th sequence. We've learned this in our previous lessons, but it looks like this. This is starting on A, and it's the diatonic 4th from A Dorian, essentially. Okay, now if you were to play that in time, it would be more like this. Oops, I messed up there on the way back down, but you'll hear me do that against the progression now, and I'm going to do that. As I move into B flat, it's going to be the same progression or the same interval sequence, but it's going to be in B flat, so it's going to sound like this. Okay, so now that's what you're going to try to move all the way through the progression, just as a practice in making a melody and sticking with it as something modulates underneath your finger. So check this out. 3, 4. Back to G. Same 4th exercise. Back to G. Now you can just improvise it, just to have a little fun and break from the sequence. Turn. Okay, see if you can keep a sequence through the keys. Okay, here's C Dorian. Sequence. It could just be like this. That's diatonic thirds. That's okay too. Here's B flat. I just continued right through it. I didn't stop. I didn't start at the beginning. Now you go ahead and improvise. Okay, so it's a very musical progression. It just sort of goes together, and it gives you a good chance to work out on something that's really important in a lot of songs, and that's just the ability to modulate and continue melodic ideas from one key to another. And the sequence idea that I was showing at the beginning, right, is really a good way to do that. Just make up a sequence, thirds, fourths, any kind of diatonic sequence, any kind of melodic idea, and see if you can just carry it through into the next key, okay? So that's what we did for our lesson today. I hope you had a good time with it, and you practice this stuff hard, and you'll get better because of it. I'll talk to you in the next lesson. Dave Hill signing off.